Hi class, in this video we're going to create Hello World Part 2 because we're going to create a Hello World application that uses a Windows form. So I want to create a new project. I have Visual Studio open. I'm going to set my file location and I want to use a Windows Forms-based application as our template type. So if I look in the template list here in the middle of the screen, I see Windows Forms app as an option, and that's what I want. Now looking at the bottom section of our window, again, we're going to name our project. And I'll leave my solution name the same. We also have the option here of changing which version of the Windows.NET framework we're able to run this project under. So that's a little bit more advanced feature. I still have the checkbox checked to add this to source control using TFS. I check my Team Explorer here and I see that I should still be connected to my Team Foundation server. So I'm going to click OK. I get finally the window asking me which project folder I want to use on Team Foundation server, and I'm going to use my Practice Projects team folder to hold this project, so I'll click OK. Now my Windows Visual Basic interface is the same as it was before, but there's still some things that we need to look at that we haven't really worried about or paid attention to in the past. First of all, on Solution Explorer, when we're working with a forms-based application, we'll still have our program.cs file, and the program.cs file will still contain our main method. If we look at our main method, we'll see that what our main method does is set up some application characteristics. Remember, we saw the application class available to us in the last video that lets us run Windows Forms applications. And finally, the last statement in our main runs that form, and our form by default is called Form1. Here is our form1.cs file in Visual Studio. We'll take a look at that, but before we do so, let's rename our program.cs file, and we will name this one main method, like we've been doing in REPL, and I'll say yes. Now that kind of separates it out a little bit more in Solution Explorer and looking at our tabs too. Now, when I'm working with a forms-based application, there are really two ways to look at my form. First of all is in design mode, and this is if I just double-click on my form1.cs file in Solution Explorer, it will open in design mode. You see on your tab, it says design. That lets us know we're in design mode. In design mode, we see a view of the form in a WYSIWYG kind of format, which means what you see is what you get. So as we design the form on our screen and run our application, the form will look like what we've designed. So great, that's what we want. Now in our form, we have, if you look over here in Solution Explorer again, some multiple files. So I'm going to expand this, and we have what's called a behind file, a form1.designer file. This is another .cs file. Let's take a quick peek at it. It's very short right now. It doesn't really have much code. It has some system code that tells Windows how to dispose of our form when it's closed. As we add controls to our form, we'll see more code get added to this code behind file. I'm going to expand this generated code so we can see what's there. What's there is just a very short constructor for our form. Remember, we created a constructor ourselves in our little application that we ran on the command prompt, but in this case, this method will be run by our constructor, and Windows generates this automatically, so it has just default settings for any of our form properties. Okay. So we have a lot of code that's associated with our form. I'm going to go back to look at the design view of our form. I can just click on that tab, or I can double click on form1.cs, either way. Now, my current object in design view is the form. So if I look at the properties window, which by default is over here on the right under our Solution Explorer window, my properties window shows me all of the properties that are available for form objects within Windows Forms, and then it tells me what the current setting is for these different properties, what the value is for our particular given form. Looking at this properties window, notice at the top, right below the title bar, it says the name of the control that I'm currently looking at in the properties window, and that's my form, Form 1. I can use a drop-down list here to select other items. We don't have any other controls on our form right now, so there's nothing else in the list. Underneath the name of the control is a small toolbar, a properties window toolbar. The first option lets us switch to a categorized view, so our properties will be grouped under specific categories. The second toolbar option lets us change to an alphabetical display. Now, I will keep mine set at this alphabetical display because it makes it easier to find settings and properties that I want to update. Now, the last two options on our properties window are what form of properties we're looking at. By default, right now, we're looking at the property pages. We'll look at this other option, the events settings, in the next chapter. So for now, I want to look at the properties for my form. Again, in my title bar, this form is going to say Form 1. Let's run this project. We can run it already. It's got those default settings for us. When we run it, let me minimize this so you can see it. When we run our project, we have the default Windows characteristics of a title bar. We have our minimize button, our restore, and our close. We can maximize it. We didn't have to add any code, if you notice, to make those things work. Those common Windows characteristics are built into our Windows Forms class. So our default form is working great, but it says Form 1 up in the title bar, and that's not very helpful. So I'd like to use my properties to change that text property that shows up in the title bar. So right now it says Form 1. On the left is the name of the property, and I'm looking for text, and on the right is the property's value. So I don't want this thing to say Form 1, so I'm going to double click in it to select what's there so I can overtype. And I want to say something like, hello world. And now my form is titled differently. Now looking at our form, there's lots of other properties we can experiment with, and they're really, really helpful. We'll look at renaming our form later. For now, let's leave it named at Form 1. Some things that are kind of interesting to try. We can change the back color property. I'll click on the value section of this properties window for the back color property, and I'll use the drop down arrow to look at different choices I have for the background color of my form. Right now I'm looking at the System tab, and it doesn't give me many choices. It's the System color set for the Windows theme that I'm using. I could change it to Web, and Web would give me more named colors that I could use, or I can go to the Custom setting to have more of a palette. I'll choose Web, and I think that I'm going to make my back color this nice coral. How is that? It's not too bright for you. So that changed that property value from that system setting to coral. Now I could go a little further, and let's change our font setting. Any changes we make to the form properties will become defaults for things that we add to our form. Right now I'm going to leave the font set at the sans serif and let you see how that works, but I am going to change my font size to maybe 12. Notice under the font setting, I can use any of the standard font options that we're used to seeing. Can make things bold. Remember, at this point, these are setting defaults that will apply to any control that's added to our form. Now I'm going to go down and change my for color. I don't want my text to all just be black on my pretty coral form, so I think I'll use more of a maroon. And that sets some defaults for me on my form. Now, like I mentioned, there are lots and lots of different properties that you can experiment with and try some things. We have our form size, which has subsettings, our width and height, and that's in units, which has a unit has multiple pixels, kind of depending upon your display properties and your display settings. But we use this units setting to try to make things consistent across platforms. Now we can change any of these things if you like to try them, but I'm going to go ahead and run my application now. Again, I don't have any controls set up on my form. I've just changed some of my form properties, and now my application says Hello World in the title bar, and I have this coral back color. I want to add a control to my form, and to add controls to my form, I need to use the Toolbox. My Toolbox is over here hidden in a tab, but if it wasn't available on the screen, I could choose View and find my Toolbox. It may be hidden a little bit. There it is. Control WX is the shortcut key. And many programmers that have multiple windows, as you start to notice here with Visual Studio, they'll use one window or one monitor, I'm sorry, not multiple windows, multiple monitors. They'll use one monitor for their design of their form. They'll use another monitor for some of these windows, like properties and the toolbox and different things. But that's why Visual Studio gives you so many options on how you can rearrange your windows so that you can take advantage of multiple monitors and other things like that. So I want to open my toolbox. Now my toolbox right now is set to auto hide, and I don't want it to be auto hiding when I'm working on my forms design. So I'm going to use the push pin. If you remember the push pins from first learning Visual Studio, I'm going to use the push pin so that the toolbox stays open. It plants itself here on the left beside my form design, which is fine. I want to go up to the All Windows Forms container because I want to have access to all of the controls. If I wanted just specific controls access, I could use some of those other containers. I'd like to use a label as the first control we try, and a label is normally something that's used by Windows to just display information, not really to ask a user to input information, but just to display something. Now, some of the properties that are available on my label, if we look at our properties window now, we should be looking at the properties for our new label. Some of the properties look the same as properties we had for the form, and that's to make Windows forms very consistent and much easier for us to use. So, for example, the text property, we can assume that's what's going to display in the text of this label, right? And I don't really want it to say label 1. Let's make it say, hello. Hello world. Kind of double it up there. Now notice my label auto sizes based on the text that I enter, and it's using that default font that I set earlier at my form level. Right now, I have my text set to align to the top left of that label. If we look at this alignment property, we'll see that the value settings are kind of a grid pattern, and this is just a way for us to easily change the alignment of an item. Within my label right now, since it's auto-sized to my text, it won't really matter much how I change the alignment, but if I wanted it to be centered both vertically and horizontally, within that control, I could click that middle box and that would take care of that kind of alignment for me. We do use our alignment settings quite a bit. Now, if I go back up to the top, I see the name of my label. We'll leave it label 1 for now. Here's that setting that allows it to be auto-sized. So if I wanted to make my label my own size, I could change that from true to false, and then I can have a giant label, whatever I like. So I'll set it back to true. Auto size is fine. All right. I do want it to be a little bigger though. It looks kind of small sitting there in the middle of the screen, doesn't it? So I think I'll change my font and I'll make it, oh, let's try like 32 or something. Oh, that's better. We can see it at least. So now we've added a label control to our form, and we've set some of the specific properties for that label control. Let's run our program and see what it looks like. Oh, great. Now we're saying hello, hello world. We're a little needy, but that's okay. So let's add some more to our application. I think that I'd like to have like a picture on here. So I'm going to minimize this and go find an image. I'm just going to use this temporarily for fun. So copyrights shouldn't care about me. Let's find the Hello World image. And you might want to find a different image. That's fine. Oh, look, there's all sorts. Look at all those Hello World programs, huh? I'll find one that I like. Ooh, I like the world one. Maybe I just want a picture of the world. How's that? Earth. That looks great. Now, of course, if I were using this to create an application that was going to be distributed, I would be aware of copyright information. We're just going to create this application is a quick way for us to do some learning. So I'll use this NASA one. Maybe they won't care. It says it's subject to copyright, but I'll go ahead and save this image. And I'm going to put this in my CIS150 folder and leave it named that for Earth. Now in Visual Studio, I'm going to bring that image into my project. There are several ways that we can do that. One of the most usable ways is to use a picture box control. So in looking in my toolbox, I'm going to go find that picture box control. There it is. It has some color in it, doesn't it? And I'm going to drag that onto my form. I'm going to resize it a little bit, change things around, and then I'm going to add that image to this. When I look at my picture box in the properties window, I see that my insertion point is actually set at this image property. So it knows, Visual Studio knows that the image property is important with a picture box control. There's another way I can find that image property. Up here, this little arrow, if you notice on this control, is giving us quick tasks that we use often for a picture box. And one of those is choose image. So either place, I want to add my image to the project resource file. Never use local resource. Local resource ties your application to your local hard drive, and that would not be good. We always want to use a project resource file. So import, go find your picture. I've got to go do some digging on mine. I have it buried. Now I see the picture that I've selected the image in this image viewer. It's loaded into my project and it's going to be added to this resources folder as part of my project properties. So now this image will become embedded in this project and won't be lost if I change computers or something where it's not existing on the local hard drive as a local resource. So I can click OK. Now, I don't like it that I'm only seeing this little edge, so I think I need to adjust my size mode. I have several options. Let's try them. And stretch image just fits the image in the picture box, whatever size you had made it. Auto size changes the size of the picture box to fit the image. Center image will kind of center a picture of the image within the picture box control that you had allocated. And then zoom is the one where it tries to kind of combine the two and fit everything together. So I like zoom. That looks great. I'm not too worried about my aesthetically pleasingness stuff right now because I just want to show you how to use a Windows form. I think that I should be nice enough, though, to go back to my form and change my colors. It looks kind of ugly. So I'm going to click on my form, and in my properties window, make sure that I'm looking at my form properties. I'm going to find that back color, and I think I'll change it to something I never like to use. I'll make it black. There it is. Ugh. And then I want to change my forecolor and make it white. That's not too bad, right? It blends in with my image a little bit better. My form still seems a little big, so I'm going to find its size property. And of course I could grab the resizing handles and just change it, but they're hidden kind of right now. So I think I'll just make it like 800, yeah. And then move my label. So I can just move things around however I like. That got my label behind it. Oops, what did I do? I opened up a code window. No problem. Let's go back to my form and move things around a little bit more. I'm going to put my picture up here in the corner and my hello world kind of beside it. So drag and drop. I can move things around however I like. Now I'm going to run my application, and I see that I have my picture and my message, and it's looking pretty good. So I think I want to add some feedback to this application, make it a little bit more interactive for the user. I think I want someone to click on my picture and have my message pop up. Let's try it. Now, no one's going to really know to do that, so I'm going to look at my image and maybe change my border style. Right now it's set to none. What if I make it fixed 3D? Let's run it and see how that looks. Does that look more like a button? Sort of. Make it where it looks like you should click there. Now, in my picture, if somebody clicks, they're going to actually generate an event, a click event. They clicked on this picture. We're going to create some code that is set to run when such an event is generated. To do that, to associate the code with that event, all we have to do is double click on our picture in the Form Designer mode. That'll open that code window up. Remember, I accidentally double clicked on label 1 earlier, so it generated some code. I'm not going to worry about it. It's not hurting anything. We'll just leave it alone for right now. I do want to make sure that I'm adding to the picture box click event, because that's where I want things to happen. So my picture box click is going to be an event procedure. It's just a regular method. It's private. It's void because it doesn't return a value. Its name is picturebox1_click. And it has these kind of interesting parameters that are data that will be supplied to us by Windows. And we don't use that data often, but sometimes we do. I think when somebody clicks on my picture box, I want my label to show up. So I'm going to make it where my label is not visible at first. And then in this code, I'm going to say, oh, make that label visible. Set the visible property equal to true. Now if I run my application, I still see my label, so something's not right. Clicking here does nothing. What I need to do is go to my form in design mode, click on the form itself. Actually, I want to click on my label, and in our label properties, we want to find that visible property, and we're going to set it to false. And that's going to make that label invisible when our program first starts running. click it. Oh, yay, there it is. Okay, so our first event-driven program, when they clicked on the picture, that generated an event, and in our code we said, make this label visible if that event occurs. Let's fix up our Hello World application with one more thing. I'd like to add a button on the application that's just like an OK button that closes the application for us. So let's find our button control. There's a button. And I want to put a button down here at the bottom of my form. There's kind of a bug in Visual Studio where the back color doesn't populate exactly right for a button control. So we'll reset that. Now, just like my form and my label controls, the text property controls the text that displays on my button. And I want it to say, OK. I'm going to find that back color. And it's set properly, but it doesn't display properly. So I will click on something else. Not transparent. Don't try that yet. And then I'll go back to black. And of course I could use a different color if I wanted. So good. I don't have much properties that I need to change for that button. Now I'd like to associate some code with the clicking of this button. When somebody clicks OK, that will generate an event, and we'd like some code to execute for that event. So I'm going to double click OK, and it generates the method header for me for my button1_click event. Notice it's right in the same code file as my picture box click event. All of the code that's associated with this form will end up in this same .cs file. Okay, when somebody clicks this button, I want to close this application. We know we were using this application class to control this form running. So I'm going to use this application class to end it too. I'm going to click that period or the dot and allow the IntelliSense editor to show me all of the methods and properties that are available to the application class. Lots. I'm going to go ahead and try exit. That sounds good. And because exit is a method, we need to have an opening and closing parenthesis to specify that we don't have any parameters to pass to that method. All right, let's run our application. Show our label. Oh, there it is. Click OK, and we closed out. So great job, perfect, perfect application. Go ahead and experiment with this a little bit. Try setting an image as your background for the actual form instead of using a background color. Do try some different things, set some different properties, get yourself familiar with some of these basic controls. In our next video, we'll add a text box to our project so that we can be a little bit more responsive to our user. Thank you.